Hello, my friends. Today we're here to talk about the difference between consultants and PPC experts. And there is a very big difference between the two. A consultant is someone who does short term fixes between 1 and maybe a couple of hours, maybe under 5. Literally, 5 hours is where I would put them. A freelancer or an agency or someone who scales a business and a revenue expert is far beyond 5 hours. And when you hire a consultant, they cannot necessarily scale your business. And I've been seeing time again, either on Upwork, the forums, or anywhere else where people do a lot of outreach, and they get the two confused because consultants are short term fixes. What's even worse about consultants is people shop by price. So they'll see all these consultants that are basically $10, $20, $30, even $40 an hour that provide these short-term fixes, which is very valid because I've used consultants. There have been times with conversion tracking where I've been at an absolute roadblock and I needed a web dev or I needed somebody to help me connect the pipes between the coding of a site and making sure that was being attributed correctly via the data layer back into GTM and a preview and making sure those are all working correctly. I have hired them and it's fine. We're talking maybe a few hours. That's it. However, a consultant cannot scale your business. Do you know who scales your business? A retainer based freelancer or agency scales your business. I'm going to say this again so loud. You cannot scale your business with consultants. You cannot. And a lot of people come to consultants and they've come even to me and they say, I have a media buying team and they're not up to, snuff. I'm having problems. They're giving us a 1 ROAS, 1.5 ROAS, less than 1 ROAS. And my answer back to this is, well, what do you want me to do? They always come back and say, well, I want you to train up my team. I want you to fix everything. I want you to come in here with your toolkit and drive our ROAS and make sure that we're scaling our revenue. In that process, I want you to train up my team. And I always say this when I get that. This is not a teaching moment. This is a ROAS moment. This is a revenue moment. Teaching is something else. Right now, you and I are here together to scale your business. You can get them Udemy, you can get them YouTube, you can get them Meta Blueprint. I talk about Meta Blueprint all the time. Matter of fact, I had somebody outreach to me and request this exact same thing. And my response was literally, have them go do Meta Blueprint. I'm here to scale your business. I'm not here to teach people. I'm here to make you money. And that's my job. So when you hire a consultant, they do short-term fixes, long-term fixes that take months, multi-months to fix because you cannot scale a retainer in a couple of weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks. It's absurd to think that. That is something else. That's a long-term retainer. So we talk more about hidden costs. And there's a lot of times where they will take assignments as a buyer, as a short-term fix that is basically a consultant and claim they can, under a couple of hours, develop your campaigns. And that's actually true. It is. The campaign setup is probably one of the easiest things to do. However, revenue scaling is not the easiest thing to do. That is long-term. Revenue scaling is a long-term thing. It is not short-term, my friends. It's a roadmap. It is a multi-month roadmap with markers and places where we meet together and say, I've met this goal. We're going to drive harder the next month, the next month, and the next month. By no means can you scale a business in under 30 days. That is not possible, my friends. How do I know that? I know that because if you look at Google Ads attribution and their conversion elements, it takes 30 conversions over 30 days. If that team is not hitting those markers, guess what? I got to step in and reset the whole thing to hit 30 conversions over 30 days. That's just for purchases. That doesn't include the learning method for add to carts, initiate checkout, and payment method. That's a whole separate conversation. So therefore, that 30 days for purchases is actually a little bit farther. However, nobody wants to talk about that. For Meta, it's 50 conversions until a campaign is fully learned. When somebody comes in and says, oh, I just want this to get working right away, that is just not possible. But consultants are out there saying, hey, you give me $500 over 2 weeks, I'll go ahead and fix this. $500 over a month, which comes out to roughly about a little more than $100 a week. $100 a week to scale your business is unrealistic. It is. And to think that you can actually scale a business of $100 a week is ridiculous. And you're being lied to by these consultants. Also, improper tracking setup by inexpensive consultants leads up to 30% wasted ad spend. 30%. Now, why is that, Yousaf? It's exactly the example that I just said a minute ago. What happens is you hire a consultant and they say, oh, okay, I'll set up your purchase conversions. No problem. I can link those easy through Merchant Center and bring them back in, test fire, and boom, you're out of here. Was enhanced conversions included in part of that? Did you know that GA4 includes enhanced measurements, a route that people click through on the site and analyze their site patterns till they get to an event, let alone enhanced conversions, which is passing back first-party data back into Google Ads. So those are two different things, but they're both very important. Are both of those set up? Is shit. If he even knew what enhanced measurement was, I'd be shocked. If he knew what enhanced conversion was, probably. Some people get it, some people don't. But most consultants say they can set up your campaigns. It's entirely unrealistic, my friends. To do this correctly, you have to have your conversion set up for add to cart, ATC. You need to have your conversion set up for initiate checkout, payment method, then purchase. If it's submit lead form, you need to analyze when people click to go in, setting the basically filling out their information, and then setting the appointment, and then a thank you page. That's already 4 different markers for enhanced conversions that you have to set up, let alone making sure those event fires happen correctly. So, my friends, it's not just setting up purchases. It's not. It's setting up ATC, IC, payment method. That's 3 other conversions that you have to set up outside of purchase. And does your consultant or your cheap freelancer that's $100 a week, can they do that? Probably not. I actually challenge you to answer me that. And then, of course, senior strategy wins. Agencies hiring senior level consultants saw a 30% increase in ROAS over 30 days. Why is that? That is because they have the experience and they've seen literally everything from small campaigns to mid-level campaigns to high-spending campaigns, campaigns that were totally whack, campaigns that were totally correct. And they're able to analyze almost like a doctor. When a patient comes in, they say, hey, my head hurts. And they're able to do all these diagnoses. So you're going to take this kind of medication. You're going to come visit me in 2 weeks. We're going to see how you are. And either you're well or we have to put you on a different medication. That's exactly how this works, my friends. Experiments are the weapon to scale. That is it. But how can you measure experiments as a consultant? Because experiments take hours to measure. Why does it take hours? Because you're doing experiments on audiences. You're doing experiments on creative. You're doing experiments on landing pages. You're doing experiments on the ad copy. You're doing experiments all day long. That's already 4 different sectors of experiments right there that you have to put together, put in a campaign, analyze, and report it back, let alone the hour it takes to just have the conversation for your weekly meeting. That's already, think about it, guys. That's already 3 to 4 hours right there. That's already 3 to 4 hours a week right there, right then. Let alone playing champions and challengers with ad creative, swapping things in, making sure that you're using dynamic keyword insertion, all sorts of stuff. That happens with experiments. Do you think you can give the right level of hours to an experiment, to a consultant versus a retainer? That's why retainers work, my friends. And this takes it back to what I was saying before. Only 14% of lower paid consultants could explain what enhanced conversions was, could explain how GA4 works in conjunction with GTM, let alone that, and let alone know what a TCPA is, let alone a target ROAS. And that's only 14% of lower paid. Why is that? Why wouldn't they know that? They don't know that because they come in and they sell themselves as, oh, I could set up your campaigns. My friends, I don't care about the campaigns. I want to scale revenue. To scale revenue, you have to design the campaign architecture, the account architecture correctly. Another big mess here when it comes to short-term thinking is, oh, okay, I want to scale this up to about $400 a day, $500 a day, $1,000 a day account. Do you know what a $1,000 a day account looks like? You probably don't. I do. I know the markers it takes to scale from $100 a day to $300 a day to $500 to $700 to $1,000. For example, the same guy I was talking about earlier, he came to me and said the same thing. We're spending about $100 a day and we're noticing that they're not scaling correctly. We're adjusting the spend and we're noticing that at $300 to $400 a day, they're not working. And the first thing out of my mouth was, are you using the same campaigns? Like, are you building upon those? Are you using the right, awareness funnel, the right mid-level funnel? Are you using the correct retargeting pattern? Are you doing nothing but cost per acquisition for purchases? Do you know how hard that is? Like that, no wonder your cost per acquisition purchases, your CAC is so high. The reason why is because it's forcing that very expensive cost per acquisition. Instead, it should be basing it on retargeting. It's a hell of a lot more cheaper to target people who are engaging with your media, who are landing page views, and re-engage with those, as opposed to doing cost per acquisition. That's the whole problem. It's a hell of a lot cheaper to get somebody in as a cost per landing page view and retarget them, as opposed to doing hardcore cost per acquisition. That's a very expensive game to play. You have to know how to play right. He didn't know. I don't even think he had retargeting set up. Now you could say, well, that's Advantage Plus, but really, Advantage Plus it's so-so, it's okay, but you still have to have your retargeting funnel set up. Do you have the right exclusions set up? Do you have the right creative for each one of those elements? Do you have the right creative for awareness and mid-level and bottom funnel? See, that's all stuff that has to be discussed. That's why retainers work. Imagine all those experiments that have to go on with each one of those levels. You can't do that with $100 a week paying for a consultant, $400 a month. My friends, it's at least $1,500 to $2,000 a month. That's the problem. And that's why so many clients are frustrated with Google ads, because they get these empty promises from these buyers who come in and they say, oh yeah, I can scale this up $100 a week. No, you can't. No, you can't. I don't care what side of the world you're on. I know Indian buyers. You know how much they charge? $600 a month. And that's in that part of the world. They're not taking $100 a week. It's at least $150. So just think about it for a minute, that the amount of work that goes into scaling is a hell of a lot more than it is for a short-term consultancy setting up your campaigns. That's what we need to talk about. And then, of course, it leads to a weak strategic direction that delays scaling by 6 to 12 months. Oh my God, that is exactly what I was talking about with my friend from Upwork who reached out to me. He literally said he's been playing this game for about 4 months now and he's having problems. And I was like, yeah, because you're not learning. You're using 2 campaigns for Google Ads, which I guess is fine, but they're not learning. You haven't even got the right amount of conversions. I don't even think he was optimizing to ATC for 30 days, for 30 conversions over 30 days, which is a huge misstep. So he was just trying to do purchases from the get-go. He wasn't even having his campaigns learn. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. Those kind of setbacks from short-term thinking, short-term cheap thinking, will cost you thousands. It will delay you earning revenue. That's why it's so important that you have to, unfortunately, my friends, spend on a retainer right away to make sure that those experiments and those learnings are in place. Now, the next question I get when I say stuff like this is, oh, well, I hired an agency and they couldn't get me results. Were they doing experiments? Were they doing weekly reporting? Were they showing you the results of those experiments, or was it set it, forget it? If it was set it, forget it, they weren't doing jack shit for you. They were literally taking your money and turning it around and just doing whatever with it. The only way that you get results is asking for an experiment plan today. Going to your agency and saying, I want experiments on audiences. I want experiments on creative. I want experiments by platform, comparing them against each other for sales. I want to compare everything from all of it. Ad copy, you name it. And then we're going to optimize correctly based on that and drive that revenue. My friends, getting to a 3, 4, 5, 6 ROAS is hard, but it is doable if you have the right captain in charge of the ship. If you don't know how to chart these waters, you won't make it there because the person only knows how to swim across a lake. We're going across an ocean. We're trying to get you revenue and get you to the moon. That's my job. And then, of course, measurable impact. 70% of businesses that hired low-cost consultants saw no performance lift after 6 months. That's exactly why. It was because of that short-term thinking. They were just saying, okay, you need to spend more, you need to spend more, you need to spend more, you need to spend more. That's not how this works, my friends. Let's look at the initial cost per clicks that come in through the traffic campaigns, compare them against the keyword planner, and make sure we're not getting ripped off. Then we adjusted accordingly to include those ATC, IC, payment method, and purchases, conversions, cost pers. Then on top of that, let's compare the conversion rate drop between ATC, IC, payment method, purchase, and make sure it doesn't dip under 50%. That's how we win. That's literally how we win. And using experiments. It's work, my friends. It's not fun. Do you think your internal team can do that? Probably not. How long do you think it would teach them? Probably more than a few months. You know, Meta Blueprint costs $150. Please invest in it for them and have them go out there, go with God, and go learn it. That's not my job to teach your team. My job is to get you revenue, and that's what I do. YouTube, Udemy, Meta Blueprint. There's 3 different options for you to have your team go out there and learn how to do ads. And this, of course, graph shows what I'm talking about. Cheap business outcomes by consultant type. So here on the left is the cheap marker. It's 76%. If you look on the senior marker, it's 18%. There's a 76% failure rate versus 18% with a cheap versus senior consultant type. Why is that? That's because a consultant can tell you what's wrong, and you're probably, unfortunately, a lot of business owners don't want to see it. They're like, well, I'll go overseas and find a cheap buyer who can just do my ads. How many times have you said that as a business owner? Oh, I just need somebody to do my ads. It's not about doing ads. The goal is to drive revenue. I could care less about the ads. I really could. I mean, the ads are important. We want them to perform well, and we need top tier ads to convert. But really, the name of the game here is to drive revenue. To drive revenue, we need experiments to find out and unlock the right pattern that we have. It's almost like in how AI learns, really. It's understanding the patterns that layer on top of each other so that when the register rings from a purchase, the pattern is completely obvious to everybody, and we go further down that pattern. Hey, this is already a purchases. We're getting several purchases with this exact pattern of awareness, mid-funnel, and bottom funnel. Let's expand. Let's take that for a spin and either do lookalikes or do similar creative, do similar landing page iterations based on that winning setup. That's how we win. But that's all done through experiments. My friends, there's a lot to go over here. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that you joined me. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, 213-700-8812. Thank you so much.